Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to RotoPros, the best DFS show, 8 Eastern Standard Time. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Diamond, Rad Rob Diamond on Twitter, Sir Robert 6 on the main sites. Welcome. Pretty interesting week. Looking to get a little bit of a review in here today. I'm really excited about the NHL slate tonight. Some really massive payouts. Big tournaments on DraftKings. I'm really looking forward to, and for NFL even, I think there's a couple really sneaky edge plays that you may want to get into your week-long play this week for NFL if you're playing the full slate. I also want to touch a little bit on cash versus GPP and why I think people should be playing more cash than GPP, especially when you're first starting out in DFS. But I'm going to do a quick little review on that and why I find success most slates just because I play so much cash. First, you will notice, it's a good day whenever I'm wearing this. Big Leafs win last night, barely pulled it out, but it was a really surprising slate all around with Washington absolutely going ham on Boston and Anaheim and Vancouver both finding wins, which I think it's safe to say not many people are on either of those. I did have some duck stacks, and I did have one card that managed to go off half decently, but other than that, my GPP rounded out pretty poorly, mostly because I had a lot of carry price, which I didn't really regret, honestly. I felt the ownership was too much to give up, and there was such an edge there that literally I had a lot of Habs, and they were running around 4 to 8% owned in most of the GPPs. So it was a risk well taken. Lehkonen really was an excellent play on the Habs if anyone managed to get their hands on him. So yeah, basically I want to start with a review of the midweek here and what went down with me and how things went. So like always, we'll do a little bit of the screen sharing, and hopefully I won't screw things up too badly. Let's there we go, get that over there. There's my main man Noah. So start with DraftKings. One second here. So as you can see, this was the Champions League. First, I actually want to show everyone what I'm playing here tonight. Just to give you an idea before a little bit of a prelude into my cash versus GPP rant I'm going to go on here. But I'm looking for a big I really like this tournament. Obviously, I'm taking a few shots at the sniper and just a whole bunch of cash. And that, like I said, that's generally what I try to do. Obviously, the sniper is a little bit more due to the buy-in. Excuse me. I usually don't play that big of buy-in tournaments in hockey, but I'm trying to, especially this early in the season, get a little bit of uptake there. But yeah, let's look over my how am I going to get to that? So that works out really well. I don't have to scroll up at all. This was my cash card from Champions League yesterday. And as you can see, it did really well, especially with the Koke goal at the very end really saved me. I always try and put my cash card into some random low buy-in GPP in case it happens to really go off, because technically cash cards are supposed to be all solid plays. I fell on Berkey and I wasn't happy about it whatsoever. I was trying to get to Oblak basically until it locked, and it locked on me before I could get to Oblak. And I guess honestly it kind of paid off. I thought Politano was the obvious cash play to go with Messi just because of his floor. He was kind of like the Sane of Man City. You weren't expecting a lot of minutes, but all you really needed was a bunch of crosses for him to pay off from that salary, and it really paid off. But yeah, I jumped on Galatasaray's free kick taker, Belanda, and he didn't do that bad, honestly, all things considered. And it really didn't hurt me anywhere else. If anything, the clean sheet loss on Inter was the most painful thing that I had to deal with. And throughout the rest of my cards, really, I was chasing that. But this is just the prelude again, to show you why you should be playing so much cash. Obviously, I had a pretty good card, but this really wouldn't have made too much money in GPP, as I'll show here shortly. So here's my GPP cards, a list of them here. I kind of tried to go with 2 different cash cards because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I found Oblak on this one. Excuse me. So I was happy, but I knew I was taking a super risk with Godin in case they lost the clean sheet. But I knew I was getting some excellent cash plays otherwise, and I wanted to pivot off Messi at least once in cash. So I did that, and unfortunately, it didn't pan out at all. Mostly due to Oblak and Godin. Like I said, I knew the risk was on Godin, but Oblak really it was disappointing for him to lose the clean sheet. It was an incredible goal, but yeah, I got paid in the free, which was nice, and then just a couple of the step overs that really didn't get paid. It was this was something I was crazy bullish on, these 3, and they really paid off, honestly, especially if you could have got him with Coutinho, which I did, but then I completely dropped the ball from there out. I was kind of hoping Delaney would be the Nickelodeon on FanDuel to the DraftKings, basically. And obviously Nickelodeon got a goal, which we'll look on FanDuel here in a moment. But yeah, this was one of the GPP cards I was pretty bullish on. And this was my big entry. I had this as a ticket I won on the weekend. It was the $222 buy-in on the triple brace. At one point, I was in 12th place. I was in 16th place. I was bubbling around 25 for most of the tournament. And then the Griezmann second goal really screwed me and knocked me from basically 25th down to 75th, which was untouchable at that point. So I couldn't get back into the pay. I got really close. The pay was 25, but once the clean sheets and the wins started coming in, I had no chance with this as my defensive core. So it was unfortunate. Again, I was chasing the clean sheet and the hopes for a random center back goal and the other center back just not to ruin me. The ownerships were actually really good. I was really happy with the ownerships in this. But in terms of the overall score, obviously the defenders really let me down. See if this will must not let load anymore. That's too bad. Okay. Anyways, I think I had one more GPP. It wasn't really anything anyways, but I still should show you anyways, because it just carries right on to this was the other GPP onto hockey. So yeah, this was okay. I just bubbled outside, unfortunately, but I was still really happy with how this card turned out. Very happy, actually. Casillas was a really good keeper option, I felt, though he was really low owned. Again, I tried to take a stand on Delaney, and the 4 fouls really cost me, unfortunately. But yeah, big on Moraga and Icardi. Obviously, Suarez didn't. His score wasn't bad, but when you compare it to Coutinho and Messi, it was an absolute disaster. So yeah, you really can't justify that, unfortunately. I wanted to make sure I had some Suarez somewhere in case he did things, but I really should have stuck with the Coutinho. I think that would have made a difference here, which could have easily put me in a takedown position had I found another gem in the flex. But yeah, that was my Champions League yesterday in DraftKings. Actually, I think I can bring over FanDuel now. Give me 1 second here. There we go. Champions League yesterday. So yeah, Champions League and FanDuel yesterday was really bad for me, especially in cash. I bubbled in basically every single cash. Again, I took a Delaney over here because I was hoping he would just do well enough, but it was a really bad cash card all around. Koke saved me towards the end, but there was no floor here to be had whatsoever. And in all honesty, I was chasing a clean sheet and low ownership, chasing a potential clean sheet and low ownership, chasing a clean sheet. And none of these things you should do in cash anyway. So I really made a mistake with that. And I was pretty disappointed with a lot of my decisions in cash on FanDuel. But then I definitely turned it a little bit. Just give me a second here. It still didn't completely fail. I did manage a couple double ups, but and for the most part, I got completely scooped on FanDuel Cash, which wasn't the end of the world because I did still have a GPP that did well. See if I can find it here somewhere. No, I can't. Anyways, I don't want to waste any more time. These shows have been going long enough. So yeah, jump right back over to DraftKings. We can talk about hockey very quickly. Kotkaniemi was someone that I felt really bullish about, mostly on the backs of my best friend's advice and him not letting me leave a room until I put Kotkaniemi in my cash cards. So obviously it really worked out. But the whole idea behind that was trying to get Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns on the same cash card. I wasn't as crazy about it, but I knew the floor was there for probably 5 points for each of them as long as San Jose showed up. I had a lot of reservations about San Jose going into this slate simply because of how they looked really bad in preseason. So, yeah, this was my cash card. It actually panned out pretty well. It bubbled on the right side, basically across the board. I just missed out on the Roto Grinders that league. That would have been pretty cool to get some money in there too. Hopefully, I'll keep going back into that. But yeah, the whole premise here was trying to get Karlsson and Burns into the same card with Austin Matthews. I felt everyone else was a little bit too cheap. I was really disappointed by Lindholm. I was super bullish on him in cash, and that really didn't pan out. But yeah, that was the cash. And then the GPPs were all pretty good. This was my tiers here. It really didn't work out at all because obviously I went on the San Jose and the Lindholm route again. And yeah, the San Jose was an absolute disaster across the board. So that absolutely cost me in tiers, no question. But yeah, keep scrolling down a little bit here. These were my GPPs now. I took a bunch of shots. I had 6 tickets with the puck drop, and I think I took another 4 or 5 shots with it too. We can count them here. I guess we'll see them all. So yeah, this was one of them here. I was really happy with how this one. Obviously, I was chasing the Toronto stack, and I figured I would get into Matthew Tkachuk at the end, just as a little bit of a late hammer. But yeah, it Connolly did excellent for his salary. I think I had him in most cards. Everyone who watched the video yesterday knew how crazy it was about Niskanen, so he paid off really well from his salary too. That's all you really need, especially in like cash formats. This one let me down pretty heavy, which was too bad because I talked extensively about the Kadri, how you need a Kadri if you're going to stack Austin Matthews and John Tavares, just because that's how the ceiling was defined. Unfortunately, Ennis didn't show up, and Mitch Marner had a surprisingly disastrous game. I didn't expect much from Grizzlecheck, so that wasn't too bad. And again, Niskanen and Anderson with the win. And neither of these did particularly well, but then we can jump to this one where I built around a little bit of Vancouver, the Vancouver second line. I figured that was going to be super low owned, and it really paid off. This was one of my big pays for hockey in the entire evening outside of the cash bubbling on the right side. So yeah, this one did really well. Again, I got some Washington in there too, which if you didn't have a piece of Washington somewhere, you probably weren't winning any money, no matter how much you had everywhere else. They were just so elite in terms of production. So yeah, across the board, this was a really good card, except for, again, Tyler Ennis, which I wasn't really expecting a lot of, but I was pretty bullish on Anaheim and Vancouver because I felt nobody was on them, and that one obviously really paid off. Then I had an absolute disaster over here with a couple, which was, again, too bad because Holtby had a really good game. A lot of people I wasn't really crazy in Sam Steele, but I definitely got talked into him across numerous different sites. So that's too bad. But again, it's what you expect from someone that costs so cheap. And my favorite pairing of the slate was definitely Derek Ryan, James Neal, and it didn't pay off at all. Again, Calgary didn't pay off, so it was pretty disappointing. But yeah, none of these really did very well. And then the disaster of them all, the Rask card. So yeah, again, that was my NHL. I barely made money again, just because of my cash and that payout. But yeah, then the tiers. I had a couple of tiers down here that did really well. Oh yeah, a couple more GPPs too. The Martin Jones obviously was really bad, and yeah. So whenever you have the losing goalies like this, you really can't expect much, especially when the two highest owned goalies of the slate are combining for basically 19.8, 20. Yeah. So yeah, not much you can do there. I had a couple more tiers that did okay. I went with Troy Terry, which was obviously a mistake in that one. It could have been a completely different story, even with Lindholm, and then a 33.5. But yeah, that's my NHL review. I thought I was pretty happy with Kotomeni jumping on him, despite looking to pay up, still not working out. But yeah, let's take a look at quickly at FanDuel because excuse me, I absolutely scooped in FanDuel and hockey for especially for cash. And I'll pull that over here right now. It wasn't an absolute like banger of a card, obviously, but it was more than enough to get me paid in every single cash entry. Now, this is the big thing, right? Even with my massive buy-ins of the $5 tournament, I think I still had 3 or 4 on top of what was there. It still didn't cost me all that much because I did so well in cash. And my cash cards in comparison to what was actually there, yeah, they don't hold water, right? They're not as good of cards at all, especially when you look at my NHL. That one in particular, it wasn't that good of a card. Like you needed 15, like 40s weren't getting paid in GPPs, but a 31 basically bubbled on the right side in every single cash. So if you're thinking about it again, like a 31 wouldn't even got you min pay in a lot of these tournaments, which would have been if this buy-in was the same as these buy-ins, it wouldn't have been as much. So yeah, cash is just easier. That's the big debate here. Why I wanted to talk about between cash and GPP. It's a big difference really between predicting what's not going to happen and predicting what is happening, because basically as it works, the cash plays are all plays you know that are going to happen. So you don't really have to risk anything. If you just pick people across the board, you're going to be okay. So really what the idea is that for GPPs, you're almost picking players that you don't expect to do well, to not be high owned. So you're almost making suboptimal decisions to be optimal a lot of times in GPP. So especially when you're starting out, you should basically be playing almost exclusively cash, just because it's so much easier to actually cash and build your bankroll. And then you can get to a point where you can take swings at $20 tournaments every once in a while and eventually dink one and potentially change your life, because that's what DFS isn't a race. Like this isn't about who can finish first. And if you play like that and you play like you are playing for tomorrow and not for what your bankroll is going to look for in 5 months, keep playing for tomorrow and you're going to starve forever. You'll just keep eating everything. So yeah, I can't stress enough how important cash is because of the simplicity of it and the guaranteed low risk of it. Now, obviously, the reason you can't play cash players in GPP is because they're going to be high owned or too high owned, and their ceiling isn't always there. Like for cash, you're fine with guys in the NHL who finish with four points. But if you have 4 points across the board and you didn't have any Washington, you're not going to take down a GPP in any sense whatsoever. But 4 points across the board in cash, and you absolutely scoop 100%. So that's including a goaltender with a win. Obviously, you don't want your goalie finishing with 4. That's not a bad score with a loss, but you need more. Obviously, you need more. You need a winning goalie. So very quickly, let's go over tonight's slates. Let's start with hockey first because I don't think there's too much to talk about in football. I only have a few takes on football, so we can save those until after. But yeah, I think I have a let's see. Yeah, I have a card done up that I wanted to show everyone. It's not an actual card. Obviously, I did that by taking a goaltender that is quite injured. But this is just a list of guys in tonight's slate that I found that are all extremely underpriced and all can definitely work in cash. They should across the board get 2 points. And like in truth, the card itself isn't that bad because it has Dubois and Werenski on the same team. I'm not that crazy about Chris Weidman, but there's no denying his spot. This slate is really, really good, and he's just too cheap for the spot he's in. So yeah, this is just a list of guys. You can go through and look at them yourself across the slate. But yeah, I really like each and every single one of these guys as super value plays to help you really get the big spots, and most of them are under 5K, except for Pacioretty. Every single one of these guys. And Dubois, excuse me, every single one of these, and Werenski, excuse me, every single one of these guys is about $600 to $1,000 too cheap. So that's really what I was looking for, and they all still really work and make sense. Obviously, this is soccer for this weekend, so you don't have to worry about that. And this is just a tiers card that I clicked the same number every single time, and it popped up just so I could have something to do this. So yeah. Let's break down tonight's slate. And the best way to do that, again, obviously, is what you want to do is open up Daily Face-Off or another equal-like site that will show you exactly the lineups and stuff. Oops, exactly. There we go. So, yeah, like I said, I like Daily Face-Offs personally. But, yeah, and also you want to get let's get FanDuel opened up here too. Excuse me, just 1 second. Sorry. In case I have to. Yeah, I don't want anyone to see my card that I've built for. Or actually, yes, I do. I want everyone to see this card. Yeah, across the board, best plays of the slate on FanDuel, no question. Take a quick look. Caboden, easy shutout. He actually may end up playing. I don't know if he's actually still hurt or not, but on the back-to-back. But yeah, all these guys are obviously hurt tonight, and this just shows you what I'll be playing. Again, a lot of cash. You want to try and load up on the cash. Have a few. I'm taking a few shots in GPP, and I'll put a single entry, probably even my cash card in that $5. See what happens, just as a single entry. If not, it'll go in here. But yeah. Okay, we already know how Boston's going to line up. We saw it last night. So let's take a quick look at Buffalo here. They're not really that good in terms, especially in depth. The lower down you get this is actually a pretty good third line. But in terms of really bad second line, probably one of the worst second lines in the league, unless Sherry steps up and has like an incredible season. Now you can see why I'm on Scandella. He plays the first pairing here, and obviously we want to look at the power play. That's it, right? And so yeah, the problem here is that Okposo doesn't play. He plays with Middlestat and Skoboda, and as you can see, Middlestat's down here, so that doesn't really stack. So like you can cut Okposo out of that and just look at these four, and it actually makes a really good stack with the entire first line and their first line defenseman. So yeah, I think that's probably, if I was to attack Buffalo, it would probably be their power play one. Maybe potentially get Boston on the back-to-back, feeling a little slow still early in the season. I know that generally means that back-to-backs aren't as serious as they are in like February, for example. But yeah, probably my favorite way to attack Buffalo is to cut a Okposo and take that. And if you want, you can go Middlestat and Sheary. I think that'll be super low owned too. But yeah, in terms of Pominville and Tage Thompson, I like Pominville, but he plays in the fourth line, and I don't like Tage Thompson. I think that's kind of a waste. But yeah, Rasmus Dahlin, see how he does this year. But yeah, that's really the stacks for Buffalo. Sheary, Middlestat, or get these four into one. Or if you really want to take Scandella as a one-off, especially in cash, he's probably going to get 3 points, and he only costs basically nothing. So we can quickly pop over here and take a quick look at Buffalo and see how they line up. So like Yeah, that's not bad for a middle stat, Oposo stack. That's really cheap. And you can see Skinner, Eichel, excuse me, Reinhardt. At least Reinhardt's cheap and he kind of gives you a little bit of discount. But I know he'll probably be playing tonight. Excuse me. So that's again, yeah, that's pretty cheap, 4.9K for Ristolainen. So yeah, that's my take on Buffalo. I don't mind them against Boston. Do I think they're going to win? Probably not, given that they're Buffalo, even against Boston. But yeah, Carter Hutton's always been a really good home goaltender. I'm not sure if he's getting the start here tonight. Actually, I know. Quick way to find out. We check the starting goalie, see who's starting. Oh man, what a weak spot. Wow. Okay, Halak will be starting. Carter Hutton. Yeah. Yeah. We gotta fade this game, especially in GPPs. I'll talk about that when we get there. This is a really, really interesting spot. Really, maybe the best spot of the entire night. Surprised they're starting Korpisalo. Is Bobrovsky hurt? No? Okay. Back to back or something, maybe. I'm not sure. And then Hellbuck, Jake Allen, Ranta, and Bishop. Dubnik and Romanov. Another game with two really sneaky good goalies. Oh, man, this is maybe the biggest smash spot of the season. Brian Elliott is not an NHL caliber goalie. He hasn't been for a couple of years. The Flyers look good, but away in Vegas in the first night, I'm not sure. Anyways, now that we see some goalies, so like generally how I look at a slate is I immediately look at the goalies and I try and figure out which goalie is really weak and I want to attack. So this is definitely one. I think that may be one. There's definitely nothing to see there. This is definitely something we're going to have to examine. How much Cam Ward is. I don't really like targeting Jimmy Howard at home. Two really good goalies again. Still sneaky though. Yeah, I would have to say Rant is probably going to be a target, and that's two sneaky goalies. And Brian Elliott's so bad. That has to be a spot. So okay, so yeah, going back here. So now we see Buffalo. We see what they offer. We know what Washington's going to do. We saw them, Brett Conley, the super cheap option. But let's take a quick look at Pittsburgh here. Now, the big thing about Pittsburgh is that, generally speaking, when they're at home, Crosby takes care of defensive. Malkin gets to do the attacking. So generally, my first step in almost every cash card ever, and has been super successful, when it's Pittsburgh at home, just take the second forward. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Crosby or Malkin or Sheenan. It happened that a couple times last year when Brassard was hurt, and it happened where Brassard was the second line center. Basically, you can just take them and know Crosby is going to be going up against the other team's best forwards every single time because he's primarily a defensive forward. Yes, he's incredibly talented attacking. Everyone knows that, but he's mainly a defensive forward. That's why he's so special. So yeah, you don't really have to risk unless you think Crosby's just going to have a smash game. There's no real reason to take him at home because you know he's going to be going up against the Ovechkin line or the top line of Washington every single time, or John Carlson. He'll be seeing John Carlson all game. Malkin's going to be seeing guys like Orlov and other guys who just can't hold Malkin. So yeah, that's usually one of my better plays most times. And you can see here, obviously, Malkin gets Kessel on one of the fastest guys in the league in Hagelin. Gensel, Crosby, Hornqvist. Really interesting third line. Dominic Simon. I doubt he'll probably pop up anywhere. And then Daniel Sprong. He played junior in the local town here where I'm from. So I'm familiar with Daniel Sprong. He's a sniper for sure. But yeah, I always kind of like Dumoulin because he usually plays second. No, he's not playing second anymore. Jack Johnson is. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty big uptick for Pittsburgh there in defense. That's kind of where they've been weak the past couple of years was their second defensive pairing. So that's pretty interesting to see that. And like again, when we look at their power play, what's amazing about it, if you can get these five guys this is basically, not only are Pittsburgh an incredible team, but this is the elite DFS team in the league, because when you put their power play together, it's basically the best part of their first line stacked and their best part of their second line stacked with Chris Letang, who's one of the best defensemen in the league. So yeah, you can see you get Malkin and Kessel, who are paired together, Crosby and Hornqvist, who are paired together, and Letang. So really the idea here is that, sure, they may combine for a power play goal. That's awesome. But they could both get a goal in each line and still do excellent, and then come back together and then do that. So ideally, the situation here is the only way Pittsburgh are going to really hit a ceiling is if they're absolutely smashing someone like Washington did last night, 7-0. And in the case that's happening, there's a really good chance both lines are scoring, and there's a really good chance on top of that the power play scoring too. So it's just like the most conducive, potent team in the league in terms of DFS, because all of their stacking options are completely leakless. They're without leak across the entire board, and even someone like Derek Brassard is really good, is an incredibly talented player. And so Jake Gensel, obviously, that's the problem with their second power plays, though, is that like it's really broken into pieces like a fourth line, second line, first line, second, fourth, so, or third, excuse me. So like there's no correlation there whatsoever outside the power play, where like you don't even need the power play to succeed, and this can still go off. So yeah, and then still have tons of out. Like the implied, I'm not sure if anyone's big into poker, but like the implied total means like the further the hand goes along, the more or less value your hand has. So if a really good card comes up on the turn, your implied total may skyrocket because it opens up a ton of different outs for you. Or for example, so like yeah, the situation here is that if you just stack this entire power play, and then the first line gets a goal, and then the second line gets a goal between those four, you're playing with house money at that point. Anything happens in the power play and you're absolutely flying. So this is why Pittsburgh's so incredible in DFS and why you really have to use them. I hope that's a good breakdown of Pittsburgh. But yeah, obviously they're not cheap. And the most important way is figuring out how to actually be able to afford them all. So that's why I suggest taking all five together. That way you have no leak whatsoever. Jack Johnson's way too cheap at 3.6K, even playing against Washington. But yeah, that's just my Pittsburgh take there. And we can take a look at Pittsburgh over here too and see how they are priced up. Interesting. Okay. See, yeah, it's interesting. No Washington forward other than Ovechkin. Yeah. This is getting pretty cheap, especially down here again. Conley's way too cheap, even though he's on a back-to-back. And then Letang, Carlson basically cancel each other out. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Is Niskanen still super cheap over here? Yeah, he is still sub 4K. So yeah, I really like Pittsburgh, obviously, to do what Washington did to Boston last night. It'll probably be a lot closer than that. It could very easily end up being like a 2-1 game. But yeah, I really like the stacking options in Pittsburgh. They'll be high owned though, so you're really going to have to like do something different after you're dealing with Pittsburgh. So yeah, next game, New York Islanders at Carolina, and I think this game is super sneaky for a couple of reasons, mostly based around Carolina. Jordan Staal, we can take a look at Carolina here. I really like Jordan Staal this slate. I know he plays third line, but this is literally the best third line in the entire league, bar none. As you can see, the daily faceoff rates it fairly highly as well. But the other big thing here too is that Dougie Hamilton and Justin Williams is probably one of my favorite sneaky stacks of the entire slate. Mostly because Dougie Hamilton in general is just too cheap. I think he's super cash viable. Yeah, especially at home against the New York Islanders. excuse me, Jordan Staal and Justin Williams. Even if you want to stack that, it's kind of broken when you get to power play, but these two kind of make up for it again. So I don't even mind Jordan Staal because, again, I think he's way too cheap this slate. But it's not really a big stacking options. You know what I mean? Especially the second line is very weak. So it's like I'm immediately drawn down here, and this is where I want to look in terms of Carolina at home, and it's super cheap and affordable. And then you get guys like Dougie Hamilton. And obviously, Justin Falk is always going to be an incredible play. I wonder how much he is. 5.1. Yeah, you can't miss with either of these two in cash. I don't mind it in GPP. I'm not sure about their ceiling, but their ownership's going to be low enough in GPP that if they do happen to hit something more than 5, which is I think their ceiling, 7 if it's like a really great game, that's probably as high as they're going to get. But yeah. I don't mind either of them in cash. The Islanders are a team this season that I'm not expecting too much from, honestly. That doesn't mean they won't do a lot, but like they maybe have the worst goalie, starting goalie in the league, in Thomas Greiss and Robin Leonard. Neither of them are like nothing even remotely close to starting goalies. They're both backup goalies, and they have no depth whatsoever outside of like once you're out of here, it's like, yeah, Clutterbuck will, if you can find a league that has hitting, Clutterbuck's probably going to be the steal of the league because all he does is hit all the time. He doesn't do anything else. Like same with Komarov. Like this, they're going to be a hard team to play against. Don't get me wrong, but like in terms of DFS production, absolutely not. And like I don't know. Without Tavares, they just aren't the same team at all, and their defense is incredibly lacking too. So the deal with the Islanders in the past is they had Yaroslav Halak, who was seeing 41 shots a game and saving 38 of them. And the problem now is that Leonard or Thomas Greiss seeing 30 to 40 shots a game, arguably more now that they've gotten worse this season. So I guess the one good thing going for them is that they're very condensed in terms of they're not broken with their stacking. So you can take Lee, Beliver, Eberle, and Bailey and Barzal again. And you can see exactly you're getting basically the whole deal there. Lee Eberle, Beliver, Barzal. Okay, so there's no Bailey. Bailey's down here in 2. Okay, there you go. So that explains it. So yeah, that's really my Islanders breakdown. If I was to attack anywhere, I would probably take a 1 with Nick Leddy. He's always good for a few points, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's actually that cheap. Yeah, exactly. 4.7's a little bit expensive. I like him better when he's closer to the Niskanen range of things. But yeah, I think, like I said, Dougie Hamilton is almost a must play, even at 5.6. Falk isn't bad either. I really like him as a player, obviously, but I know what Dougie Hamilton's going to bring to the table, and that's more than good enough at 5.6. And yeah, one of my one of my favorite plays the entire slate. I think Justin Williams is going to be so sneaky, and he's been tearing it up in the preseason. So yeah, I have no problem with Justin Williams. Probably not cash. That's a little bit too expensive. But yeah, GPP, I'm going to be pretty bullish. So this game I'm not going to spend too much time on because it's the most obvious goaltender standout game of the early season. I'll be really surprised if this has more than 3 total goals. Both teams are good enough, but the thing is that the goalies are just so elite. Now, there's one player actually here that I think is 100% cash viable. And generally speaking, I use him. I have him in my list from earlier here, and it's Craig Smith. Obviously, I have Jordan Staal. I talked about him a little bit already, and I talked about Scandella. But yeah, Craig Smith, I think, is someone that's super viable for cash this slate. He plays line 2, line 1, really cheap, sub 5K. I know Lundqvist isn't exactly going to allow goals, so like I'm not suggesting that's what's going to take place here. But you only need like 3.5 fantasy points, especially in cash, and he's more than capable of that on this Nashville team, who still like to shoot the puck a lot. And especially on the power play. I think the Rangers this season are probably in the race for the first overall draft pick. Now, like I don't know if I mentioned, I grew up with Adam McQuaid. He's literally one of the nicest guys in the entire world, but he's not a number one line defenseman. I don't think so. Anyways, on a team like this, like maybe he could have got away with it on the Bruins if he played ahead of a bunch of different people, and like they supplemented the depth, because that's what the Bruins were about. But this is going to be a really tough year for the Rangers. A really, really tough year. A lot of really young guys. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to take of them this early on of the season. Like this is just I like Brett Howden, but this is just a unbelievably bad third line that should get exposed every single time they step on the ice. This is decent enough if Jimmy Vesey can have a big year. And this is decent enough if Bukovic can actually play like a first-line winger for consistently for an entire season. But, yeah, like this is a good fourth line, but you can't hope to win every single game by just matching up the fourth lines every single time. But, yeah, this is going to be absolutely exposed every single time. And I know they're at home against the Predators, but that just further drives home why I like Craig Smith so much. I think there's going to be a lot of penalties this game to the Rangers all season. I think their penalty kill is going to be something to attack. Yeah, I think Craig Smith is going to get matched up against the Rangers' weaker lines a lot more times than not, where this line will see the brunt majority of the Rangers' first line. Which is fairly defensive oriented. So that's my hope, really. And is Lundqvist going to steal the show? He absolutely can and hopefully will if this team has any hope of performing. But yeah, where are we here? Sorry. Yeah, that's still pretty cheap whenever we consider all the wingers available, 5.1. Yeah, that's way too cheap for someone like Craig Smith. Interesting. There's a few names down here I really like. We'll get to a little bit more later, but yeah. Nashville. I do like them. I think they will pepper the Lundqvist with saves. So whether or not he can hold on, though, is a completely different question. So yeah, that's this game wrapped up. It's probably going to be a 2-1 game, 3-1 tops, and that's with like an empty net goal. So yeah, I think that's safe to fade in GPPs. Even the goaltenders. That's pretty cheap. I'm not gonna lie. I know the Rangers are probably going to lose, but he's going to see 40 saves if he gets the win, especially a shutout. Whew, he would absolutely break the slate. So yeah, that's something to consider. But for the most part, I think the Rangers are a pretty safe fade across the board. They really don't offer too much. Even from value, like it may be in a future game when they're not playing Pecorine, but yeah, playing Pecorine and this kind of defensive core just isn't what I'm looking to attack at all. Where's Ekholm? Is he power play too? No. So yeah, absolutely stacked. Absolutely stacked. Anytime these if the Predators don't score 4 power play goals tonight, I'll be slightly surprised. Like that's how stacked their power play is. And Lundqvist can only do so much. So yeah, if I was to do anything, it's absolutely first Craig Smith. I'm going to be all over him. But maybe a Forsberg, Subban, Johansson, Arvidsson. Yeah, you could probably go all 4 here in a stack if you wanted and hope for a couple power play points, and or just go Craig Smith by himself in cash. Even as a GPP fill, he's absolutely fine. I don't mind it at all. But yeah, that's that game there. Let's jump on to Columbus and Detroit. I think this game's absolutely stacked with options, mostly because much like the Rangers, the Red Wings are really going to struggle this year, really badly. Literally the worst depth in the league. Absolutely nobody across the board. Dylan Larkin's a good guy, but like this isn't a first line. This isn't the second line. It's an okay third line. Like Thomas Vanek's a legend. He's an OG. There's no denying that. And Ablicator's half decent. He scored 20 goals a couple times. And everyone knows Darren Helm's literally the fastest guy in the entire league, like unquestionably. But like DeKaiser, Cholowski, Trevor Daley, guy, his pitcher's broken. Like Libor, Sulak, Jonathan Erickson, like come on, Jensen. I don't know. I know Mike Green's. They got some hurt injuries, obviously. Like they're without their top two defensemen. So Columbus aren't a team to go out and like destroy, but usually at home they try and do the shutdown game when they have the matchups. I don't see them trying to do matchup games tonight and just scoring at will. Again, too cheap. I like these wingers. They should all be a little bit more expensive. But yeah, again, Dubois, way too cheap. Way too cheap from that salary against the Detroit team that should have nothing in return. And like I don't like saying these things because generally what happens, the team goes out and surprises everyone and wins the game. But like I feel very confident saying there's really nothing to look at here on the Red Wings. Wow. Yeah, maybe Bertuzzi as a super sneaky because he gets power play one on defense and like you could get some ownership off your shoulders. But yeah, there's really nothing to look at in terms of Detroit, and I'm pretty bullish on Columbus. I even don't mind Dubinsky if you really want to be super fancy in GPP and save some money. Obviously, he doesn't get any power play time, but I think there's a lot to be had from Columbus in this game, especially their top lines. And we can take a quick look at that. But yeah, Dubois, Atkinson, Panarin, Foligno, Wenberg, and Borgstand. Yeah, these are all like this is a really good third line. Josh Anderson has goal upside. They obviously don't get enough. I don't think Boone Jennings. Oh, he is. Look at that. And so is Josh Anderson. That's awesome. So yeah, I have no problem with this line whatsoever. I know Dubinsky's a big checking forward or whatever, but he still has assists upside. And from 3.5K, you really don't need too much at all. This fourth line is probably the best. The depth on Columbus is incredible. Like this fourth line is literally one of the best in the entire league, if not the best fourth line. Duclair is not a fourth line player. Riley Nash, I know he's not great, but again, like he's not a fourth line player. Sonny Milano, at least you could probably get away with saying it's a fourth line player, but yeah, Werenski, yeah, absolutely slamming right now, especially with Seth Jones on the sidelines. It's really hard not to put Werenski every single place this slate against Detroit. He's going to be called on in every single moment, and this is why this is one of my favorite stacks. Obviously, everything else can pay off too. I just think this is super condensed. There's no leak to it whatsoever, no risk. Because like, what if Panarin doesn't do what we need from his salary, or it's just this is safe, it's easy, and it's simple. So I guess easy and simple are the same thing. Sorry, creativity shutting down. Not really much to look at other than I said I like that third line in Columbus an awful lot. Maybe one of my favorite GPP targets of the entire slate. Detroit are so bad. And like once Detroit's trying to match up with this and like trying to keep Foligno and Wenberg at bay, they're not going to have any time for these three, especially if for somehow we get a power play point out of these two. You're flying. If Dubinsky gets 2 points, you're absolutely flying at that point. So yeah, fire up Columbus 3 tonight. I really like that line. Moving on, Chicago and Ottawa, another really interesting game. as a lifelong Leaf fan, I hate Ottawa. So I think any team that goes up against them has a chance to absolutely smash them. It just so happens they're garbage this season, so we don't even have to worry about who they're going up against. Another excellent team. DeBrincat I have on my list. Obviously, way too cheap on DraftKings. Only 4.9K. Line one, line one paired with Jonathan Taves. Like really hard to turn that down against an Ottawa team who are going to struggle to deserve to be on the ice all season. I think there's lots to be had here, especially it sucks that Kane and Seabrook still play in different power plays and different lines. But that's the thing about Chicago that's kind of frustrating in DFS is that they really spread things out. So they'll have one player here, one player here, one player here in different lines, and they won't put them all together in the same line. Like Saad plays with Smaltz and Kane. So I guess you could do that in the hopes that the second line hits and not the first line. It's kind of in the same sense a poor man's Pittsburgh, in the same idea that you get first line, second line, first line defender. So it isn't the worst thing in the world. But in terms of their even strength, it definitely isn't as appealing. But yeah, the power play's fire. I like it. Chicago, I think, is absolutely smashed because, like I said, Ottawa just isn't very good. And there's one more thing I'll talk about here about Chicago in a second, which I'll lead to because, like, the worst second line in the league, easily. It won't even be close. Unless Mark Stone somehow has a 40-goal season or something obscene. Like, this is easily going to be the worst second line. Anytime this goes up against the Patrick Kane line, they're going to get absolutely done up. I don't know what Ottawa is going to do at home in terms of matchups. Like, I mean, I know what they're going to do, but like, I don't know what they can do. It's a really, really serious situation here, and like, that's why I like Chris Weidman. 1-1 for only 3,200. Like I know Ottawa is not going to do very well, but how bad are they going to be that Chris Weidman can't pay off from 3,200 in cash? I don't mind that at all. But Dzingel, Ryan, Stone, Duchesne, Dzingel, Ryan, and then Stone. So yeah. Mark Stone, you could probably cut out of that or take as a solo shot, and then you can just rock those four as a stack. But like, I have no interest in this team whatsoever. It's going to get crapped on these bottom two lines. Like, they're literally going to have to roll two lines all season. Like, the second these bottom two pairings get on the ice, things are going to get really bad. I'm sure they're all nice people and they work hard and they're good dressing room players or whatever, but like, they're just not going to add up whenever they're going against the likes of Chicago. Kunitz and Anisimov are absolutely going to destroy the Ottawa lower lines. Obviously, are they? Show me Kunitz. No Kunitz. That's too bad. Who's Anisimov sad? Come on. That's a little bit unfortunate. So Anisimov doesn't really have anyone you can pair with. That second power play is pretty broken in terms of stacking correlation, so I'd avoid that. But yeah, that's really not all I want to talk about. The last thing I want to talk about is Cam Ward at only 7,800. I know they're coming into Ottawa, but yeah, 7,800 is way too cheap to go up against a team like this, like Ottawa. There's really, so we have to be afraid of 7,800 from all this. Like, are they actually going to score 4 goals? Chicago's an elite franchise. Like, I just don't see this happening. So yeah, I think Cam Ward's the top top goaltender play of the entire slate. 7,800, really hard to deny when you consider all the other salaries here. There's too many toss-ups down here. I think this is super sneaky too, but we'll get there in just a second. but yeah, like gives you an idea. I think he's probably the cheapest sure win. Excuse me, not Bud Light. But like I'm not sure where to go in terms of Ottawa. I think there's nothing to go for. Now the Winnipeg St. Louis game. St. Louis at home is always incredibly sneaky, always, because especially in a big slate, they're generally low owned because not a lot of people are going to be instantly looking to them later in the day, especially when they play a team like Winnipeg. So I think Winnipeg's good. Don't get me wrong. I think both goaltenders are really good, but yeah, St. Louis at home is just always really sneaky. Like anytime you can get Tarasenko at sub 10% ownership, it's something you absolutely have to consider. And he happens to have a really good stacking partner with Ryan O'Reilly this slate. Now I know you can probably take all three if you want. I just don't think Patrick Maroon has DFS upside. Could he pay off? Sure. 4.3K is a little bit too expensive for a guy who's made a career of not being an attacking force. He could score 20 goals on the right team throughout a season, but yeah, I'd rather go with the Brinkat every single time going up against Ottawa, or Craig Smith going up against the Rangers non-existent team. So yeah, I think that's a really good option. Again, 6,600 is just way too cheap. I know a lot of people are expecting the Jets to win the Cup this year, but just away from home on the first game of the season isn't something that they should be jumping for joy over. And like really, in my opinion, overpriced. Bufflin's obviously a good player. Wheeler's obviously a good player. Shelfie's obviously a good player, but is he a 7K good player? Not at home. I don't know. I would rather spend up to Seguin literally every single time, even drop down to Malkin or Carlson or Taves or Aho, or yeah, the list goes on. I'm not going to say Duchesne. I'm not saying it, but yeah, we can take a look at Winnipeg. Anyone who knows anything about hockey basically knows what Winnipeg are. They've done this same team for the same few seasons now. Kyle Connor is always interesting because he's always vastly salary underpriced. Then not anymore. Never mind, 5,800. Like he used to be $1,000 cheaper. So yeah, I'm just not interested in these salaries. Brian Little is my third cousin. Shout out to Brian Little. But yeah, the in terms of like a stacking option here, Little and Pro play together. And then you'd get probably those four. Shelfie, Wheeler. Yeah, exactly. So, again, that's kind of a pretty heavy stack for first line in case first line doesn't go completely ham and it gets spread out. And again, I don't like targeting the Blues at home. It's just not something you really want to do. Now, obviously, this isn't the same Blues team in the past, but if I'm going to be honest again, I think this is one of the better teams in the NHL in terms of defensive capabilities. Like Ryan O'Reilly is a really good defensive centerman. Braden Schen's probably the best defensive forward in the entire league. An upgrade from Stastny, if that was even possible. Bozak, anyone who watched the Leafs know Bozak is a really capable defensive forward. Alex Dean's really capable two-way. Jaden Swart, super two-way. He's even got two-way skill. Perron doesn't. But yeah, like their defense is absolutely stacked. Like especially their top end, like Bouwmeester still continues to be one of the most reliable, consistent real life defenders. Maybe not so much DFS. Petrangelo's always boss. Floor of 5 points most nights. Like Dunn is even capable now because he's playing on the first line power play, and I bet he's probably not that expensive. Yeah, but he should be on my list too. So yeah, maybe even over Weidman. I would take Vince Dunn over Weidman. So yeah, that's way too cheap. Winnipeg are expected to do really well this season. That's not to say they won't do really well tonight. And I think the ownership and the price on the Blues are all right across the board. So I'm really bullish on the Blues and GPP tonight. And I think the Blues and the Columbus Blue Jackets stacked together really interesting to make a couple of neat plays because they're all moderately priced and you're not giving up too much risk. Even throwing some Blackhawks too if you want. But yeah, moving on to Dallas, Arizona. Now, the thing with Arizona most seasons is that they're really, really bad. But in DFS, you don't need a lot for them to pay off from their salaries because they're always so consistently cheap. Like Ekman Larsson's probably a 6K defender for 5K. Stefan always pays off from anything sub 5.5K. He's an incredible cash option. Most slates, like really, really reliable points and always really, really cheap. So yeah, I have no problem with Stefan and cash. Even in GPP, like you can attack these the Coyotes because they don't need to win games. All you need from them is a line to score a goal, and you're basically flying. They make excellent fillers, excuse me. One of the worst teams in the league, no question. Like Derek Stepan doesn't even have a stacking option. Like literally what you do is you take Stepan and Owen Ekman Larsson, and you just work with that. They stack really well on the power play too. Like I know a lot of people probably say something like Keller or Panic, but they just don't have offensive upside. Just stick with the Stepan and Ekman Larsson and cash your GPP, and it could really pay off when they both finish with 5 and cost not an arm and a leg. But yeah, Dallas is obviously going to be the highest owned team of the night, and for really good reason. They have an incredible team. They've shored up their defense or their goalie with Ben Bishop, as long as he can stay healthy. But this is easily the best first line in the league outside. Well, like even like in most teams, because like the Crosby line has a weak spot, and most lines have one weak player on it, and this is just stacked to the 9. It's like, yeah, even their second line is pretty weak, but again, like you don't need a lot down here. You just need them to hold and let their first line do all the work, especially at home. And yeah, there's no real depth in the Stars. That's always been their issue, is their lack of depth. As you can see, the deeper you get down, the worse it gets. Now, there are a couple guys I think are really viable. Obviously, I would go with these 4 in a stack and cut out Spezza. Devin Shore is someone that always is like 4K, something really cheap, and finds a way to get in the power play. Where is he? Yeah, 3K. Like, see, he plays a role on this power play that's rather unique. Dallas play a unique type of power play that isn't widely used across the league, and what they do is they play with a player very high up by the defenders, and what they do is they try and get early tips or early hard pass shots. So basically they'll go back to the point, and they'll take a really hard shot from the point that's more of a pass, and Devin Shore will be sitting on top of the face-off circles, and he makes a really early tip, and that's what Dallas does in the power play a lot. Spezza holds that same role on the first unit, and it makes them very unique plays, especially someone like Devin Shore, who isn't even in that bad of a line here for in terms of third lines. Fasca's a really good player, so like I have no issues with the Dallas third line. Even is Fasca getting power play? That would be pretty awesome. No, he isn't. That's too bad. Janmark and Richie. Janmark, Richie's at the bottom. See, that's kind of broken a bit, but yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind a little Fasca to Shore and some GPPs. I think that could be really sneaky, because Shore, like I said, always gets this kind of spot to pay off. And in a game against Arizona, like when it's these blowout games, you have to give more credence to the weird plays, just because there's going to be so many more things happening that it's just opening a lot more doors. So you have to consider these cheaper guys, and someone like Devin Shore at only 3K and Fasca at only 3.7K, that opens up basically every door to absolutely pack your card full with superstars. So I have no issue with those two in GPP, but I definitely wouldn't take them in cash. But yeah, that's really my Dallas breakdown. It should be a 4-0, 5-0 game. It wouldn't surprise me if Arizona get two and make it like a 5-2 game. I would actually prefer that way. Derek Stephon can still pay off as discounted salary and still being the first line. Same there. Like 10K for 10 points is a half good deal. So yeah, let's see here. Especially with no ownership. So yeah, let's go on to the Minnesota-Colorado game. I think this game I think is a very sneaky goalie game. Both goalies are very cheap. I definitely give the upper hand to Minnesota and Dubnyk. They are definitely the better team of the two. But yeah, we take a quick look here. The cool thing about Minnesota is that they have a few players that are always every season doing the same cool DFS thing over and over. They keep their stacks really set. So you'll see Stahl, Granlund, where are we here? Stahl, Granlund, Zucker, Stahl, Granlund, and then Zucker will be down here, obviously. And then Koivu will always be with Niederreiter. So, Stahl will never be on the ice without Granlund, and Koivu will never be on the ice with Niederreiter. And this never changes. And on sites like Left Wing Lock, you can later take a look and see how consistent that pairing stays. And this is probably one of the better second lines in the entire league. Maybe one of my favorites. Niederreiter is super capable. He's waiting to have a breakout season. It's just a matter of time. So another player I really like is Charlie Coyle. He played his junior hockey half near close by here, but he always seems to get he's plays first line power play. He always gets first line power play minutes and plays in the third line, which is usually pretty sneaky because a lot of times not many teams are looking to properly match up these lower lines in Minnesota, and they're very concerned about these two super stacked, super consistent lines. Zach Parise obviously is still like an elite talent and is still a 20 goal scorer. 5.1K is probably a little bit too cheap, but yeah, I'm looking elsewhere other than Minnesota. I think it's a super sneaky goalie game. That doesn't mean I'm on Landeskog necessarily, but again, Colorado have a pretty good team. There's nothing necessarily overtly wrong with them, some of the other teams we're talking about. They're lacking depth for sure, but this first line is again one of the best in the league. If Rantanen can have a breakout season, it could very easily become one of the best in the entire league. And again, it's the exact same deal, right? They don't mess things around. So these four make an incredible little stack. Tyson Barrie, I know he plays the second defensive pairing, but yeah, I think that's a really, really smart stack. Or if you want to be sneaky, you could go Tyson Jost and Tyson Barrie and hope that second line matches up for most of the game. I'm really not as bullish on that at all because this line is so good and will be 90% of the Avalanche production. That's a little bit of a hyperbole, but yeah, I don't mind Johnson. I prefer Tyson Barrie, though. He's usually one of the cheaper, consistent minute players in the league. Yeah, right there. Yeah, 4,800, not bad at all. And that's the big thing with Minnesota here. Ryan Suter, I didn't put him on my list. I was debating it. Ryan Suter has averaged 20 minutes of ice time basically since he was a kid. I don't know, honest to God, look at his minutes from last year. Obviously this was a little bit of an outlier. I wouldn't read too deeply into that one, but this was consistent throughout the entire season where I think the lowest point he played for most of last season was 22 minutes in a game. He just logged so many minutes. So if you think Minnesota's in the game to do anything and Suter isn't a 5K plus player, you're usually more than safe putting him in cash. I think he's one of the better cash. That's what I was talking about earlier. Minnesota players that just do neat things. Suter is one of those players that every single season plays close to 25 minutes every game, and that's really hard to find for this kind of salary. So yeah, I really like that. I'm not going to play either goalie. I don't think there's going to be a ton of shots this game. I think there's going to be a lot of block shots, which kind of lead me back to the Ryan Suter and Tyson Barrie takes. But yeah, maybe 2-1, 3-1 Minnesota. Yeah, low scoring game, especially when you compare it to the next one that we're going to talk about in the one previous. So yeah, Vegas and Philly. We'll take a really quick look here at Philly because they are a really good team. Honestly, they have one of the deepest teams in the entire league. And the reason that is because they do an incredibly good job at spreading out their talent across all of the lines. Scott Laughton was the World Junior captain for Canada a few years ago. So, like, he's a super capable kid. He's just not a superstar player yet by any means. But, like, incredible third line. Simmons and Van Riemsdyk are unbelievable defensive forwards with excellent attacking upside. So, like, there's a reason it's number one in the league, third line wise, to daily faceoff because it's that good. This was one of my favorite stacks to go to last season. The Lindholm to Nolan Patrick, always super, super, super low owned, and generally super, super cheap. We can take a quick look here. Yeah, 2.5K. 4.7. Lindholm must not be playing power play. Yeah, exactly. He was in this mix last season, so it made it easier. But yeah, I still don't mind Nolan Patrick. I think he's super sneaky. But yeah, this is probably one of the better power plays in the entire league. Any team that takes penalties against this power play is going to suffer immeasurable pain. Incredible power play, super, super, super talented. So I'm not necessarily looking forward tonight because I like Vegas a lot more, especially at home. The Vegas are the matchup team. That's literally what they do. You'll see it when you look at a breakdown like this. But yeah, another really good line. It sucks that Provorov's in the second. I prefer him. I would prefer him up here instead of Gostisbehere, but that's okay. Great stacking options. Basically, just not tonight. Because yeah, this is really where you want to go now. Whenever people tried to wonder how Vegas build their team so well, you only really have to look at these types of rankings to understand why they do as well as they do. Fourth best last season, first line with Pacioretty. This line is just disturbing. This line won't draw a lot of attention, but that's the thing with Vegas is that their bottom lines never draw any attention. They've never done any work, and they may be very low rated, but in terms of real life, they just have to hold their own, and they'll be more than able to do that, especially against Philly, who will be forced to deal with matchups all night. But yeah, again, like the defense aren't excellent. Either of them aren't world class, but like together they make one of the better defensive pairings in the league. And again, same idea, not by themselves, not that great, but put them together to make one of the best second defensive pairings in the league. So that's how Vegas literally built their team, was just when you put two guys together, they make really good options. And I know it's pretty interesting that he's getting first line and third line, very much like a Charlie Coyle, super sneaky. But yeah, to me, there's no real reason not to just to hammer the big ones. Now, personally, I think William Karlsson's going to draw a lot of ownership. This is where I'm going. The second line, it doesn't even break up for the power play. I think Vegas' second line is the play tonight. Probably my favorite play in the entire slate. They're going to get mixed up against the Philly second line, which Patrick Lindboom, Voracek just isn't good enough. If Vegas can stay out of the box, they should have no issues here. And yeah, even if you want, you can put Theodore in the mix too, because he's a really, really capable defender and probably super cheap. And that's the big part about this Vegas stack is like Karlsson's great and all, but he's also 6.7K. Statsing's only 5.1K. Marchessault is decent and all. He's not a 7K player. He just isn't. Pacioretty is, that's for sure. And Huala, probably a little bit more expensive than I would like, but his ownership's going to be rock bottom. And if you take something like that and like that's so low owned. That is so low owned. It's crazy. And the goal upsides are crazy from Pacioretty and Tarasenko. So if you're building a GPP, like I don't know. I don't know how to turn away from something like that right there. Like you can even put in someone like Ben Bishop, and you're not ruining your ability to get half decent defenders. And at the same time, you can still get really good defenders, like any of these guys. Tyson Berry is still viable for 4.8K. Nick Leddy, Periaco is still super viable in the stack. Yeah, I'm pretty sure even what does Colton play? Power play. Second? It's not even on it anymore. That's too bad. Okay, maybe not Periaco then. But yeah, like I don't know. Like I said, it's really hard to ignore something like that. And then you can take something really again cheap like Cam Ward, who's massively underpriced. So yeah, like that's a really, really good GPP card. A really good GPP card. Because like nobody's going to be on these two teams, and the goal upside from those two players is just absolutely insane. And again, Dougie Hamilton's not going to have any ownership. You can drop down something way cheaper, like even Owerinski if you want it more expensive. Drop way down. There's someone who's viable down here. I'd rather not take Letty and go against what I just put there. But yeah, like I don't know. Gives you an idea. Gives you an idea for GPP. Sorry, that wastes a little bit of time there. And then cash, we can just scroll back up here again. Drop out Darling because he isn't really on my radar. Since he's hurt and all. But yeah, like this isn't that hard again. Get in some Malkin. Get a real goalie. If you have to, you can go down to these 3.2 guys that I was showing. Where are they here? Vince Dunn. You can totally get away with that in cash if you really wanted to. Chris Weidman, you can absolutely get away with that if you want to. So like, yeah, that still leaves you with lots of options there. And like, you don't even need to take Malkin. You don't even need to take Fleury. I just happen to really like all this value across here. Even you don't even need to take Craig Smith. Like, it's up to you, right? Like what you want to do. I think I gave a really good rundown of all the different teams and who I like in each team, especially for GPP. I think the lines that I mentioned are super sneaky. But yeah, that's generally the rundown. Now I want to very quickly touch on tiers. No, that's more of that. Just a second here. Let's see if I can find some tiers. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, tiers this slate I think is really straightforward again. Tyler Seguin's the super obvious cash play here, tier one. Ovechkin's on a back-to-back. Crosby's more defensive, and Kane plays second line. And he really isn't a cash play as is. He's more of a GPP. He has a really bad floor that can hit from time to time and really cost you. So Patrick Kane's not a cash play. He's a GPP. Where on the other hand, Tyler Seguin will rarely fall below that kind of fantasy value. Obviously, again, a couple outliers there. But yeah, Tyler Seguin, the very obvious cash play from tier one. Tier two, I think, is pretty obvious again. You just want to go right back to Dallas and take Jamie Benn. Not only does it stack perfectly with Seguin in both cash or GPP, but it just makes the most sense. Both these guys are in back-to-backs, and you shouldn't expect too much from them, even against a crappy team like Buffalo. And Forsberg's going up against Lundqvist. Now, Forsberg is going up against a crappy Rangers team, but it's still a really good goaltender. There's nothing whatsoever to suggest that Jamie Benn's going up against anything here. Bad goalie, bad team, a great matchup, and they stack really well. So that's my take in tier two. You can get away with Forsberg and GPP, though. Tier 3, I think, is really straightforward again. You just want to click on Malkin in terms of your cash. He's going to have the best matchup of that game and should go relatively low owned in cash. Like Jack Eichel against Boston isn't something you want to target in a cash scenario. Pasternak coming off a back-to-back. Patrick Laine away from home going against St. Louis isn't something you want to target in cash. Barzal is acceptable in cash. I would definitely wouldn't try and talk you off it. He's more than capable of getting 2.5, 3.5, but so is Malkin, and Malkin has like the 8 fantasy point upside. Barzal probably doesn't have that this slate going up against Carolina. So yeah, I think Malkin's the obvious cash play there. In tier 4 is a little bit more complicated because I don't really see an obvious cash play. The one I'm going to go with, though, is Roman Josi. I think he makes the most sense. Block shots, one of the highest shot totals and shot block totals in the league last season. So I have no problem with him in terms of a floor. In terms of GPP, I think he can go any way. Not looking to target the Blues. I think he's fine without a 7K salary. I think he's fine if you're going for other flyers. I think this is absolutely fine in either actually cash or GPP. He doesn't really have a floor for cash, so I'm not that bullish on it. But in terms of GPP, I think Panarin makes excellent sense. But he does have a goal side up this week, so I don't mind it in cash. And Aho just doesn't have the upside for either. He doesn't really have the great floor, and he doesn't really have the goal upside. So yeah, I'll probably stick away from him. Maybe in GPP if I'm taking other Carolina players. But yeah, that's my tier 4. Tier 5, a little bit complicated again. What I decide to go with is I'm going to go with Pacioretty in cash. I think that makes the most sense. In terms of cash, Tarasenko sneaky, but I think has GPP upside. Winnipeg could be good enough this game to prevent Tarasenko from getting any shots, whereas Pacioretty has a goal a game so far this preseason. So I have no problem with Pacioretty in cash. And like Kuznetsov is on a back-to-back against Pittsburgh, not a cash script at all. Drew away from home against one of the best teams in the league, not a cash script despite him having some relevance. Arvidsson has a lot of GPP relevance to me, especially when you start stacking the Predators. Keller, I'm just not interested in at all. Maybe in GPP, but the only time I'd really look for him in GPP is when his salary would be making a huge discount, like Stephon. That's why Stephon is so good. Stephon with 4 or 5 fantasy points is awesome. Keller finishing at 4 or 5 fantasy points probably isn't going to cut it from 6K. In tiers, the salaries aren't important, but I'm still just not looking. There's no upside there, especially compared to like Tarasenko, Arvidsson, or Pacioretty. And Jonathan Toews is good enough. Not really a floor play and doesn't really have the upside. The only thing he has going for him this slate is he's going against an absolute garbage team. So he does have a GPP script you can play with, but in terms of cash, it's pretty obviously Pacioretty for me. Tier 6, I struggled with this for a while. I'm not sure if it even has a cash play. I sold on Dougie Hamilton, but the reasons are Carlson's coming on the back-to-back. Hornqvist isn't a cash play. He's a GPP play, and a really good GPP at that because he allows some really interesting Pittsburgh stacks. Shelfley away from home, not really something I want to target. Bufflin could warrant as a cash play, but I just think St. Louis offer a little bit too much to hold any kind of upside that he could have. Dougie Hamilton's got all sorts of upside. Granlund isn't really a cash play at all. He could have some GPP upside, and Duchesne isn't really much of either for me either. I suppose he could have a half-decent floor, but there's no real upside for me this slate going up against Chicago. So yeah, Dougie Hamilton's the easy cash play for me there. In tier 7, I don't think there's a cash play here, honestly. I think you can get away with Phil Kessel if he has a 5-shot game. If Mark Stone, you could if he's the only one the Sanders rely on, which would make sense. Ratnan's in a good spot, but not really cash or GPP for me this slate. Letang's a pretty good cash option, but I'm not really sure whether or not he doesn't have a great floor. He's more of a GPP play, but I guess you could take Klingberg in cash this slate in here just because, one, there's not really many other options, and two, he has a pretty decent floor. I would go with PK if I wasn't already going with Roman. I don't want to double down. I got burned on that last night taking Burns and Carlson. I wasn't really thinking it was a good idea, and I still don't think that's a good idea either. So I'm not really set on that. And Ehlers isn't really a cash play, more of a GPP. And Koivu has an okay floor, but no real upside. The only real reason you'd want to go with Koivu is if you were trying to stack him with Granlund. I'm not really interested in that for cash. Any of these guys I'm really not into. I would probably just go with Klingberg so you can stick with the Ben and Sagan. You know what I mean? And I know that's a little bit heavy, but it's Arizona. Honestly, what are we really afraid of for cash here? I wouldn't go 4 deep into a cash with Dallas. 3 is still totally acceptable to me. And then the last one, again, there's no real cash play here for me except for the bottom 2 in Dubois and Williams. Dubois makes the most sense to me because he's going up on the first line, and going up against a Detroit team who really shouldn't have much of an answer for him whatsoever. I think he makes the most sense here, and I think Williams is a really good option too. Will be really low owned, probably more of a GPP play, but I don't know what it is. I'm just crazy about Justin Williams this slate. Something about it, I don't know what it is, but yeah, I'm all on the Williams train. But definitely for GPP, for cash, I'd prefer Dubois over him. Krejci on the back-to-back. Eberle away from home doesn't really get enough shots. You need Gensel to have a really good game to be cash relevant. He does have goal upside, but again, that's more of a GPP script. You could go with Larkin, but I just don't think there's much. Columbus is one of the best defensive teams in the league. They're not going to give Larkin an inch. Backstrom's on a back-to-back. And Zibanejad is just not on a good enough team against Nashville. So, yeah, that's really my cash takes for tiers and gives you a really good idea for the GPP breakdown on them, too, because I think there are some stacking options in there. And, finally, I wish you didn't see that, but that's okay. Finally, you may as well see it now. I was there. I can't take it back. There's what it looks like for me right now. They're both going to change, especially I'm not keeping Scandella here. There's just no way. That doesn't make sense. I'll probably switch him out with Suter. But, that's kind of what I won't be keeping Williams in cash there either. He'll definitely be coming out. But, yeah, that's how that breaks down. And I thought I had a NFL showdown set up there, and that's why I wanted to click that. Sorry about that. I really don't like showing everyone lines because it's not really acceptable. It's not something that the industry appreciates, and I don't want to go against that. So I apologize for that, but it happened, and there's no taking back in lives, no takesies backsies. So yeah, let's check out the showdown game tonight, though, because I think there's definitely not only something in the showdown, but something to be had in week longs too. There's really only a couple of solid takes here. Most of them revolve around the showdown. I think Tom Brady's an absolute must, and most of that's around Edelman coming back, who I think is also a must. James White is really, if you're playing week long, you're probably going to want to get James White into your exposure in either cash or GPP. I have no issue with him in either. Honestly, without Rex Burkhead, he's getting all the work, and last slate, I'm serious, get James White into your cards. He doesn't need to rush the ball. He's getting so many targets without Burkhead. It's obscene. And they were crushing Miami. They didn't need at all to keep throwing the ball. They could have ran with Sonny Michel the entire way. Instead, they kept choosing to do this. This is an obvious choice for Brady. It's been an obvious choice for him for multiple seasons now. Get James White into your week-long cards this slate. I don't see why not. But now for showdown, we have to get a little bit different. Actually, sorry, flip that back over again. You're probably going to want to get Ebron into your week-longs too. I know he's kind of burned us a little bit in back-to-back slates where we're literally sitting, waiting, hoping, praying, and it finally hits but not good enough. But the Colts are going to be without an absurd amount of players. Hilton, Jack Doyle, Vinatieri may not even be able to play. Max out. So, they're very limited here in terms of the Colts. And yeah, I like Ebron. But now, in terms of the showdown, there's a lot of way more smart, way smarter people than me that have talked about showdown strategies and how you have to play showdown to succeed. Something one of my buddies calls it is osmosis. And you'll hear me use this term a lot on the show. Osmosis is basically the player you have to play because it works out that way. You may not want to, it may not make sense, but you have to do this if you want to afford this guy, and this guy who will all score 60 points and win you a GPP. This is what happens. Like, literally look back in your history of GPPs and showdowns and look at how many people won by having a random guy that still did absolutely nothing. That's generally how you have to play showdowns. You have to throw out your optimal decisions and intentionally, actively seek out suboptimal decisions to get that kind of edge. I think there's a couple this slate that are incredible. The first one, I know some people at RotoPros right now are going to be laughing at me when I say this, because I was super bullish on him. I talked him up, and he did absolutely nothing last slate, and that's Jordan Wilkins. Now, Marlon Mack's out. He didn't get much work until later in the game and didn't catch his only target. So, like, he's not a big catcher of the ball. It's just the fact is that he costs 1.8K, and he's literally their starting running back. So I don't know. I don't know what more else you could really want there and from a player like that. Yeah, is Hines playing? Yeah, there you go. So he's out. So maybe Hines is where you want to go then. But like, yeah, the ownership on this is going to be so stupid low. All he needs is one touchdown, and 1.8K is going to be obscene. Um, Hines is obviously the better play, but you can easily take both, and you're not ruining yourself. But what I really wanted to do actually is talk about is this right here. I think this is probably one of the safer cards you can go with. Vinatieri, what a legend. When I hope he plays, first of all. That'll be a huge loss for them. But the key here is that the Colts are so hurt, and they're not good enough that they're probably going to be kicking a lot of field goals. So yeah, that's my take for showdown. I think Vinatieri is a really interesting pick. It doesn't. I would even consider putting someone random in your flex. It doesn't have to be Tom Brady. I wouldn't put Tom Brady in the flex, honestly, or excuse me, in the captain spot, because most people will be, and I just don't see a big point in doing that. You may as well separate yourself by taking even Edelman in the big spot, or no, I think the runaway best person to put in that spot is easily James White in a PPR site like DraftKings. No question, he should be here. So yeah, that's really my showdown take. I think James White and Eric Ebron have super value for the week long too. But yeah, that is basically it. That really wraps up the video for today. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate it, as always. Rad Rob Diamond on Twitter, Sir Robert 6 and the main sites, rotopros.com. Get over, check us out. Been absolutely flames this week. I really appreciate all the messages and well wishes I'm getting for providing the information out here for free on YouTube. But yeah, I love hearing how people are succeeding off my advice. Nothing strokes my ego more than hearing those things. So yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in. I wish you everyone the best tonight. I don't think I missed everything. I'm pretty sure I got it all. But if I did, sorry. But we should be good. We should be good to go from here. If we're to take literally anything from this video today, it's probably Dougie Hamilton defense, Max Pacioretty on the wing, probably Dubois as my centerman. I think he's my top centerman, and I think Werenski has a lot of warrant there too. Justin Williams has a lot of warrant to me in GPP. But those first group of names are definitely my cash locks for this slate. And yeah, for my goalie, my favorite goalie this slate's probably going to be Fleury. Maybe drop down to some Cam Ward on Chicago. I think he's more than capable. And I also really like Mrazek on Carolina. I think he could be super sneaky. But yeah, that's my takes. All the best, everyone. Good luck tonight. Much love, and hopefully see you all at the top of the leaderboards. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe to RotoPros here. Like the video and give us a subscription because, again, nothing stokes our ego more than that. Take care, everyone. Thank you.